All right, before we get started, just a preliminary comment. As I'm sure many of you know, and rightly so, ethics in Philly prohibit me from answering political questions in this space and using city resources to do that. So if you do have any questions of a political nature, I will take them outside and afterwards, but I will not take them in this particular scenario for those ethical reasons. Are we ready? Sure. We're good? Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here on a beautiful day in a beautiful city where the only emergency I can think of for public safety is what we call DJT. Donald J. Trump is the emergency right now in big cities in America, which is exactly what he wants. And we will get into that. The statements we are making are not actually political. They are statements about law, about order, about justice, about the sworn obligation of prosecutors and other law enforcement to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States, about the universal moral obligation to protect each other's safety. That's what we're talking about. Unfortunately, as I've said many times, somehow my job from the time I was elected in 17 and took office in 18 has changed. The meaning of district attorney has changed. And it has changed from being someone with an oath to seek justice within the context of public safety and to uphold the Constitution and laws to DA, meaning democracy advocate. It is not something I adopted, it's something I swore to do. I just never really thought that the preservation of the government of the United States would be an issue that I would have to face. I just never thought that military invasion of America's big cities with a fear-based racist agenda in order to pave a path for a military takeover is something that I would face. And I deeply wish I didn't face it, but we all face it. And we better talk about it now, because this is a wonderful city. This is a beautiful city. This is a city that right now, much like Washington, D.C. and other major American cities, is enjoying historic lows in crime. And if you hear a 34-time felon, convicted felon, a 34-time convicted felon, talking about lawlessness, well, he ought to know he's good at it. When you hear him talking about insurrection, the only insurrectionist I know is DJT. He's it. He and his band of buddies that he let out of jail. So we need to talk a little bit here about a couple things. And I'm delighted to be joined by exactly the right people to have that discussion. One of the things we need to talk about is whether the invasion of big cities, when there is no actual emergency other than DJT himself by the military, is constitutional and legal. Unfortunately, the conversation often ends there, because when you get to the word morality, nobody even thinks of this president or thinks that's a conversation worth having. It is flat out assumed that he will try to get away with as much as he possibly can. And if the law doesn't permit it, then he will hope that some of the bums he put on the U.S. Supreme Court will change the law. That's the reality. That's not normal, as Wanda Sykes would say. That's not normal. What's normal is we don't just ask whether the president can do it under the law, we ask whether it's moral. Is it right? Is it wrong? What's normal is that we ask whether it's a good idea. Is it a good policy? That's normal. So we're going to be normal today. We're going to talk about all those things. Constitutionality, legality, morality, whether it's good public policy or not. We're going to talk about all those things. Because I hope they're listening in D.C. They need to hear it now. It is important that they hear from big cities. As they like to say in Philly, I ain't the one. Every Philadelphian likes to say that. Well, I got something more. There's a friend of mine in the office who has a better one. better phrase, and I hope every Philadelphian thinks about this. We ain't the one, and we ain't the two either. We're not going to be the three. We're not going to be the four. You're not going to D.C. and L.A. and New York and coming here, because we are going to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States. We are going to hold strictly, properly, and justly accountable any National Guards person the president puts in harm's way for no good reason, who is placed in a position to cause problems rather than solve them during a period of historic low crime. And I do mean historic. We are joined today by Imam Kenneth Nuruddin, who is the resident Imam at the Philadelphia Masjid, by the Reverend Carolyn Cavanes, who is the senior pastor at the historic and tremendously important Mother Bethel AME Church, which, among many other things, currently stands on the piece of real estate longest owned in U.S. history by African Americans. We are joined by Rabbi Mordecai Liebling, who, among other things, was regaling me with his own history of arrest for only good reasons, trust me, very different than the president. He gets arrested for really bad reasons. And we are also joined by two very, very capable attorneys from the DA's office. One of them is David Napierski, who has a leadership position within our law division and has always taken a very important interest in constitutional preservation of democracy. And we are also joined by Pete Andrews, who also has a leadership position within our law division. Great thing about Pete is he worked with us for a while, and he got a very exciting opportunity in Washington, D.C. a few years ago, and that was the opportunity to prosecute January 6ers, which he did for 2 years. And he did a great job. As many of you will recall, there were hundreds of convictions. There were people in jail who needed to be there. Some of them had sentences that were on the order of 20 years. And then Donald Trump, who just can't stop saying lawless, and who, based on all the evidence, was involved in the process that set off that insurrection, that attempt to overthrow the government of the United States, then he pardoned them all. And as long as he was at it, he fired all the prosecutors who had achieved this just outcome in the biggest prosecution in U.S. history. And so, it's about the only time you're going to hear this from me. I just want to thank the president for giving me Pete Andrews back. We appreciate it. Your firing has placed us in a better position to be ready for whatever you're thinking about for Philly. We will be calling up these speakers in this order. We'll be calling up Mr. Napierski and Mr. Andrews together to speak first in relation to the legality and constitutionality of these bogus claims for an invasion of Los Angeles, an invasion of Washington, D.C., and a threatened invasion of other cities. We'll be calling them up together. And then after that, in this order, we'll be calling up Imam Nuruddin, Reverend Cavanes, and Rabbi Liebling to speak. I will get up after that, make a few more comments, and then we'll go to Q&A in this official press conference. It is my pleasure at this time to call forward two people who you definitely want in your foxhole when there's an invasion of a city, and that would be Dave Napierski and Pete Andrews.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the District Attorney. My name is Peter Andrews. I am the head of the Federal Litigation Unit at the District Attorney's Office, and I wanted to share some thoughts about the legality of the President sending military troops into the cities of Philadelphia. And the short answer is that there is no basis for him to do so. The President does not have the inherent constitutional authority to call up the National Guard. His ability to do so is restricted by statute. That statute also prohibits him generally from using the military to engage in civilian law enforcement activities. His authority is narrowly boxed in by the law. And the conditions that are required to trigger those laws, you may have heard about the Insurrection Act. We're going to get some fixing on the microphone.
Just hold it for right now.
All right, easy enough. So you may have heard about the Insurrection Act. The conditions required to trigger the Insurrection Act in Philadelphia or any other major city are not met. It is not impracticable to enforce the laws of the United States. There is no insurrection on the streets. There is no evidence that the president cannot execute the laws of the United States. And it would be unconstitutional for the president to take certain steps like inviting out-of-state National Guard troops into Philadelphia unfederalized and without the governor's consent. We've also seen this week that the president commandeered the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. for his own use. That cannot happen in Philadelphia. The mayor is in charge of the police department. That is a unique circumstance based on D.C.'s unique constitutional situation, and it would violate the Constitution for the president to try to take a similar step in Philadelphia. I want to make a comment about January 6th, because the district attorney just mentioned my role in the prosecutions on January 6th. January 6th was a dark day in American history. A violent mob attempted to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power. They succeeded in disrupting it. They caused a tremendous amount of property damage, and they injured, assaulted, attacked hundreds of law enforcement officers. I was proud to be a small part of the team that sought justice for the citizens of our country, for the crime committed against all of us, for the police officers who were injured, and for the members of Congress and their staffs who were just trying to do their job. The fact that the president would, on the one hand, pardon those defendants, and then turn around and say, as he has said this week, that committing an offense against a law enforcement officer will be met with the strongest possible response, it's not just hypocritical. It reveals that the president does not understand the rule of law. He believes that there's one rule if you support him, and one rule if you do not. In Philadelphia, we believe in the rule of law, and we will continue to enforce those laws in whatever circumstance presents us. And I will ask Mr. Napiorski if he has anything to add.
Hello. I just had one thing real quick. My name is David Napiorski. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Law Division at the District Attorney's Office. And everything Mr. Andrews just said is spot on. There is currently no legal basis to deploy the National Guard here. It is not possible under the city's charter to commandeer the Philadelphia Police Department. If President Trump were to try to do either of those things, it would be, frankly, illegal and unconstitutional. That's it.
Thank you, gentlemen. They will be available for questions. It is now my pleasure, as we move, I guess at least in part, from what's legal and constitutional, and this is not to limit anyone's comments, but to what's moral. What is acceptable? What is good policy? What is right and what is wrong? I know, not preoccupations of this president, but it is my pleasure to call forward in this order Imam Nurdin, Reverend Kavanes, and then Rabbi Liebling.
Good afternoon. And we, the faith community, we really represent the people. But from this perspective here, we're like the canary in the mine. Whenever there's a fissure and something dangerous begins to emanate, it's our duty and responsibility to sound the alarm. And I said we represent the people. Now the people of the United States, the people of Philadelphia are very diverse. We are male, we are female. We come from different ethnic groups, different countries. We have different class distinctions. And we're not talking about first class or middle class, but we're talking about a human designation. We have different educations. We live in different geographical environments. Some of us are urban, and we know the word urban is used as really as a signal. When you say urban, you really are saying black and brown in the political environment. We have different geographical locations. Suburban, urban, rural. But the thing that binds us all together, are the documents that we all agree to accept as being citizens in America, in the United States. And those documents, one document lays out the inalienable rights that all men are created equal, all men and women. That's the foundation. We then have an operating document, and that operating document gives us our agenda. It says, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. This is our moral agenda. And in order to have a more perfect union, then we have to get rid of things that are divisive. But the most important thing that all of us agree on is that justice has to be the benchmark for all decisions that are made. Is it just? Is it fair? And when decisions are made to destroy a community, and I'm a Vietnam veteran, so I remember the montage of destroying the village to save it. If you were to ask the people in Philadelphia, not what do we want, but what do we need? We need justice when it comes to how we live in our relationships together. We want a just relationship. And we have to send this word to those who are in Washington, the administration. We say justice. Don't misunderstand our accent. We say justice, we need justice and not just ICE. Because that has been the response. The response has been to militarize any issue that comes up and treat it as though every problem is a nail and the only tool you have is a hammer. And we know hammering away fractures the unity that is the basis for our relationships to form a more perfect union. And the only way we can do it with all of our diversity, the common bond that we have, are those documents that establish the principles for the rule of law, for criminal justice, for social equity, for how to form relationships between the different elements of the federal, state, and local government. And if we have an issue even here in Philadelphia, unless we invite you to come in, we know what our conditions are, what our problems are, and we can best address them, and if we need your help, we'll call you. So we say this to those who are on the federal level. Philadelphia is in good hands and in good shape with both the criminal justice and law enforcement. And it's almost like you see someone having an issue in their home, and whether you ask them do they need help, you just want to come in and break the door down and destroy everybody because you think there's an issue going on. So what we say is we want justice, we need justice, and not just ICE. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, District Attorney Krasner, for bringing us together in this way in order to send a message, a profound message, that this indeed being the birthplace of democracy, and certainly in my respective place in being able to provide and to caretake for the longest and continuously owned piece of property held by African Americans in this country, that we come sending a message that we are built upon the principles for which democracy stands, and we also know has the capacity. Greatly concerned, in fact, and wanting to put it this way, that any community should be measured upon the way in which that it cares for the most vulnerable. And clearly this administration does not have heart. Clearly this administration looks over the least of these. Clearly this administration is more interested in self-propagation and elevation, wherein we have people who are in need of love and of justice, and certainly that their lives do matter. We come from a tradition which teaches us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. A tradition that also elevates that our relationships matter across, that we are called to be our brother and sister's keeper. We also come from a tradition, Richard Allen, the forefronter, and if you will, a founding father of this country, who states, and I believe those words still peel through now, that we will trample over oppressors who desire to take over our rights. And so we come in that tradition to trample. We come to show that this is not and will not be allowed here, and also standing in solidarity with our brothers and sisters who are now living in fear and not even knowing if perhaps what all is being purported to be said, if it will actually happen. To also know that we must be vigilant relative to what is happening around us, but also as people of faith, that we stand on and believe and uplift a tradition that we will trample over oppressors who desire to take over our rights. Thank you for this opportunity to share.
Shalom, salam, peace. So we have the three Abrahamic religions here. And if there's one thing that we agree on, it is that love is the basis of our religions, and that loving one's neighbor is the way we should act in the world. If you listen to King Donald's rant yesterday, a lot of it was about throwing unhoused people off the streets and putting them God knows where. He is inhuman in that way, and he tries to dehumanize all of us as a precursor for getting rid of as many of us as possible, and we can't allow that. It's not fashionable anymore to call somebody a racist. He is a racist. That is bad. That is evil in all of our traditions, in the Quran, in the Torah, in the Christian Bible. He is a racist. Let us remember he is the one who put the ad in the paper for the Central Park 5, right? Those are his roots. His roots, when he started in business with his father, was to be sued by the NAACP for discrimination in housing. He started his political career by saying Obama wasn't a citizen. The man is deeply a racist, and that's why he attacks cities that are homes of black and brown people and wants to take over. And listen to his rhetoric. He is using the rhetoric of hatred, not the rhetoric of connection. In my definition, sin is something that cuts us off from other people. When you cut us off from the wholeness, we are all one being. And anything that divides us, that sets us up against each other, is what I call sin. That man is a sinner. That man is dividing us. That man is seeding hatred. That man doesn't care about the welfare and well-being of the citizens and the residents of this country. We must resist his invasion of our cities, and we must resist his attempts to overturn democracy. We will not allow King Donald to take over.
Thank you all. And of course, we will go to Q&A shortly. As I sat here and I listened, I couldn't help but imagine myself sitting in a dentist chair. And I say, "Yo, doc, how my teeth?" And he says, "They're great. You want a root canal?" Well, no. We don't, at a time of historic lows or even ordinary, predictable fluctuation in crime. No. We don't want a military intervention any more than we all want root canals for healthy teeth. That is not how this is supposed to work. The word emergency, by definition, refers to extraordinary events, not ordinary events. I will say this. If you speak in terms of Gandhian theory, which of course Dr. King studied at great length and spoke about, what you'll see is that part of the theory of nonviolent social change in the direction of justice was that you let the oppressor bear its claws. You let the oppressor bear its claws, whether that is firing water at church women kneeling and praying in the middle of the park, or that is brutality in public gatherings of people seeking to make things better. You let the oppressor bear its claws. What better time for people to see the oppressor bearing its claws than the year after the best year of public safety improvement in the recorded history of the United States, when it's getting even better? Anybody who doubts the hand of the divine? Think about that. You doing it now? It's not even an ordinary year. It's not even up a little. It's not even following the normal cyclical fluctuations of crime. We are at an amazing low in Philadelphia and in Washington, D.C., and in Baltimore, and in one city after another. We're at amazing lows, and we've been headed that way now for years. And this is the time when a 34-time felon, and I'll get into his crimes in a minute. It'll take a couple hours, but I'll get into them. This is the time when he's going to say we have a public safety emergency? Well, let's just look at that a little bit closer to home. So I got up this morning and once again looked at my crime stats, and what did I see? I saw this, and this is available on all of your cell phones. It's available from the Philadelphia Police Department, not my data, their data. And what does it say? It says overall violent crime down over 7%, property crime down over 7%, all crime down over 7%. We have homicides down 17%. We have shootings down 18%. We have shooting victims down close to 8% in almost every category, almost without exception. Crime is down, 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 down. After Philadelphia led the United States among cities of 1 million or more in terms of public safety improvements last year, and exceeded the average improvements of those cities for the last few years. That's what we have. You want to get more specific? How many homicides do we have? We have 138 homicides at this time, and this is a graph of the number of homicides that we have had on this day of the year since 2007. I will tell you, because I checked, if you go back another 40 years before that, the point where we are, number 138, all the way over here on the right, that's lower than those years too, okay? We literally have fewer homicides in the city of Philadelphia right now than we have had any year on this date in over 50 years. And it's not a little bit less, it's a lot less. The two closest years were around 2013, 2014. We're more than 10 fewer than we were on those record years. The best year in the last 50 years were more than 10. below that. Are you talking about an emergency? Really? Or is it that you're talking about an emergency because you want to pretend everything is an emergency so that you can roll tanks? Is that what we're actually talking about here? You know, it even gets sillier because when we talk about lying and we talk about Donald Trump, everybody just glazes over. Or as one media outlet said, and frankly they should not be proud of it, Donald Trump lying is not newsworthy, okay? But D.L. Hughley, who was always entertained us the easy way. He just gave us a tape of Donald Trump bragging in May of this year about how low crime was in Washington, D.C. Remember that? May of this year, Donald Trump out of his own mouth talking about how crime was incredibly low.
Our capital cities are overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drug-down maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it.
Nobody's very talented. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. Street crime, violent crime by 25%. And people see that they notice the big difference.
And the murder rates are plummeting. We are now able to report that the murder rate is on track to be the lowest in U.S. history, modern recorded U.S. history, thanks to the team behind President Trump's priorities.
Well, let me not get into the silliness of claiming that when Donald Trump had been in office for 4 months and this trend had been going for 4 years, it was all about Donald Trump. Let's put that aside as footnote number 565 of silliness when it comes to this administration. Nevertheless, I don't know, maybe he's having memory problems. In May, everything couldn't be better in Washington, D.C., but by now it's a public safety emergency. You know, that is what we are actually dealing with this administration. It is a complete disregard for anything that is truthful, anything that is actual. If you have questions about how it is that we got to this point in Philadelphia and in many other cities where we're seeing these improvements, I won't go on at length because there's been a lot of good journalism around this, a lot of good criminology done around it, but it has a ton to do with the reality that we have community-based organizations that have dug in deeply, that have been supported financially, that are doing incredibly important prevention work. We have victim services organizations. In Philly, I would point to, among others, Northwest Victim Services, Anti-Violence Partnership, Sankofa Healing Studios, and others that are working collaboratively with the DA's office and with all of our partners to support families, communities, and individuals impacted by gun violence. Very interesting article recently talking about how the number of professionals who are dealing with young people, those people most likely to be involved either with gun violence on either end of the gun, that number somehow, and I don't know how, but it went up a lot since the pandemic. And that is coinciding exactly with this remarkable period of improvement in public safety. These are all things that are significant, that are true, that are actual. And I do not in any way want to understate the role of soccer coaches and clergy and good neighbors and everybody else who actually cares about other human beings. Everybody else who is not a sociopath, who is not out to dehumanize, who is not out to take as much money as possible from poor people to stuff it in their own pockets to use for God knows what. What we have going on in Philadelphia and what we have going on elsewhere is actually good news, but that is not the news that Donald Trump needs. And so when I saw this cartoon this morning from a fine Philadelphia publication, which appears Donald Trump with his, did he call him his best friend? Jeffrey Epstein. It occurred to me that it's probably worth talking just a little bit more about who and what is a crime wave. So, let me see. Everybody's hollering, give up the Epstein files. They are asking someone who, in my opinion, is a one-man crime wave, Donald J. Trump, they are asking him to be a custodian of documents that could show his involvement in horrific crimes of rape, sexual assault of minors, of girls, of a pedophile ring. They're asking him to give up documents that might implicate him. Right? That's what we're hearing. Well, how likely is that actually? And is that what this is really about? Is all of this invasion in Los Angeles, all this invasion in Washington, D.C., effort number 204, to avoid the fact that people would like to know who was involved in that pedophile ring, and he would like not to give up those documents. I would remind you, Pam Bondi had the list on her desk. She said that. And then there was no list. List got raptured. I don't know. How does that happen? I would also remind you that this is a man who was found liable in civil court for bank fraud. In other words, using documents, sworn documents, to commit fraud. This is a man who was found guilty of criminal offenses for paying to cover up his relationship and his abuse of campaign funds with Stormy Daniels. He got 34 felonies out of that. What part of that sounds like he's going to be an honest broker and give up documents that might implicate him? The reality of what's going on here is very deeply disturbing, but it's also a distraction. It's also the effort of someone who has a very, very long history, not only in criminal court, but also in civil court, and also in other ways of abusing women. Well documented, including by members or former members of his family. That's what we're actually talking about here. Someone with a very long history of fraud, which has been established in criminal court and also in civil court a number of times. Someone with a very long history of discrimination, as was referenced earlier. It was not just that they were discriminating in housing, they were very specifically discriminating against black people in housing in the city of New York, when his father was making money that he did a pretty good job of losing. You know, that is what we're talking about. So when that man says lawlessness, really? I mean, is there anything more lawless than that? Is there anything more bothersome than that when we talk about this? Well, we do have some history that we need to pay attention to, because we've spoken about the legality, we've spoken to some extent about the morality of what is going on, but there's some history here. It's a history that I know the Imam recalls for a lot of reasons, probably. One of them being he was around, and one of them being that he was a Vietnam vet. It's a history that I actually spoke to a woman about today, a wonderful woman, I'll leave her name out of it, who's now 75 years old, and who was a freshman at the Cheney Teachers College, otherwise known as Cheney, in 1968. When she got there were protests going on. This was a teachers' college, and there was a strong belief on the part of the students that there needed to be more study in African American history, African American studies in general, that these teachers needed to learn it, so they were in a position as they went out into the world in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and elsewhere to teach in the public schools. They were well informed about it, and they did engage in protest there, and the National Guard was called in, despite the fact they were entirely peaceful in their behavior. They were lucky. What happened to them was not. What happened 2 years later in, I believe, May of 1970, what you are seeing here is a photograph of what is known as the Kent State Massacre. This is a university in Ohio, Kent State University. This was at the time when Richard Nixon, a criminal president, had engaged in an illegal war in Cambodia, one that was not approved by the Congress as the Constitution requires. These students, as you may know, many of them were on the chopping block for being drafted for a war. They did not believe it. And so over a period of days, tensions grew. National Guard was deployed, and by the time they were done, 4 students were shot to death. 9 other students were wounded, one of them permanently paralyzed. Why am I talking about this? Because it is not a good idea to take a military force who are trained to kill the enemy and deploy them for a civilian peacekeeping job. The truth is that the Philadelphia Police Department has a special unit to deal with protests, to deal with unrest, civil affairs unit, and it's a good thing they do, because they are remarkably good at preserving life, preserving safety, and protecting people's sacred constitutional right of free speech. It gets a little more difficult when other officers who do not have that specialized training are involved. But all of that works so much better than when you ask military people who do not live in the city of Philadelphia, who are not trained to engage a civilian population, to show up in military gear, carrying weapons that these days include the equivalent of AR-15s, who are not trained even in arrest, and you ask them to intervene. What are they supposed to do? Well, shoot. That's what happened at Kent State. Their intervention consisted of shooting. That's what they did. These pictures are here, and you are seeing these pictures, including pictures of people who are either dying or have just died in 1970, because it's a bad idea to deploy military forces for civilian peacekeeping activity in relation to sacred constitutional rights of people who just want their country to be better and do better because they are, in fact, patriots. Real patriots, not insurrectionists, rebranded as patriots, but real patriots. This was the cover of the New York Times. This is what everybody was talking about at the time. I was 9, and I remember it. I saw it on the news. This is not what we need. It's not what we want. Now, there is another question. Is it what Donald Trump wants? Is this actually an effort to cause unrest, to cause violence? That would be a pretty good basis for coming up with an emergency that doesn't exist. I mean, it'd be a fraud like everything else he does, but that'd be a pretty good basis, wouldn't it? You cause people in a city to react to injustice, to abuse, to violence, and then you claim that somehow it's all their fault and they started it. Well, they didn't, and we're not going to have it. As I said earlier, Philly's not the 1, and it's not going to be the 2, it's not going to be the 3, and it's not going to be the 4. This is not something that Philadelphians, whether they have an official title or not, are going to tolerate. We simply will not accept this kind of notion. Tanks rolling down our streets to get ready for a later day, when Donald Trump really wants the tanks to roll down our streets. All right, at this time, we are prepared to take questions on this topic. As I said before, if there's anything, strictly speaking, political, I will address that outside. Let me go down my list, and if I missed anybody, please let me know. Mr. Harris, 6 ABC. Very good, thank you, sir. Tina Hogate, Channel 29. Thank you. Ellie Rushing, Philadelphia Inquirer. Okay. WHYY, Carmen Russell, and I'm sorry I can't. Suchansky. Is it Sluchansky or Suchansky? Sluchansky. Okay, my apologies. Yes, sir.
You used the word fear-mongering racist agenda to describe what Trump is doing when he's threatening to send National Guard troops into Philadelphia and other cities. And the rabbi also used the word racist. And I'm wondering if you could expound on that. Is it because the cities that he identified basically have black leadership, or is there more to it?
Well, you know, I'm going to ask my clergy friends to assist here, because I think they usually have more insight than I do, and then maybe I'll have a comment at the end. Would you care to say anything, any of you? And by the way, I mean, would all of you care to say anything?
This president, or honorary call president, has an issue with humanity and people, and in particular when it comes to people of African descent. So it's the dehumanization, it's demonizing, it's just flat out, just, I don't want to use the word, the defined word, but just flat out racist. And it's also when we look at the other ways in which, per quote unquote, this strategy, which seeks to even erase the contributions and the traditions and the institutions by which people of color who are so a critical part of America and the fabric and the strength of what we find to be democracy. So that's his agenda, is that you do not matter, your life doesn't matter, And so in his wheelhouse, using what he feels to be any tool possible or lack thereof to be able to, and so we come standing and saying, we're not going anywhere. Okay, so, colleagues
I call him a racist because all you need to do is look at his policies. Every one of his policies that are supposedly neutral are policies that end up taking away economic benefits from people of color. All of the things he tried, if you look at the Medicare, Medicaid, Big Beautiful Bill, if you were to analyze the Big Beautiful Bill about which people are going to lose the most benefits, it is going to be people of color. If you look at the way he is attacking universities in this country, the result of that is to have less people of color in our universities. If you look at the way he is trying to force Texas and other states to gerrymander their districts, those are all at the expense of Hispanic or African American congresspeople. If you just analyze policy, political, economic, you will see that the people that are hurt are people of color. That is racism.
And let us not have such short memories, because remember, the people in Ohio were disparaged as eating cats and dogs. We had a bunch of criminals and racists coming over the southern border. We have people from certain countries, S-hole countries, who are really not welcome and wanted. We have people in the urban areas who are vilified and disparaged as being scum and lowlife. And again, these are all dog whistles. They're code language for not necessarily just being racist because it's something that he delights in, but it's the best tool in the toolbox to divide. And dividing and conquering or fragmenting society into broken parts so that when society is broken, it no longer functions. So when you point out and you disparage certain categories of people, the people in Charleston, there were fine people on both sides. That's the language that was used, and we can see the demographic in Charleston. But when it came to places like Ohio, the southern border, people that come from other places, they are disparaged, and their racist code terms are used. They're dog whistles, but the dog whistles are so loud now that all of us can hear it.
Thank you. I certainly don't want to miss the opportunity to remind us all of something that's not a dog whistle, which is that Donald Trump was twice endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan. And in case you all think, well, that's beyond his control, is it? His grandfather was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. His grandfather, whose name is not Trump, because neither the president nor the vice president kept their actual names. His name was Trump, rhymes with Kampf. But anyway, his name was Trump. His grandfather was arrested marching with the Klan, and I believe it was 1912 in New York City. They only arrested a few, but there was a cast of many, many hundreds, which I think suggests that Donald Trump's own grandfather was an extraordinary participant in that Ku Klux Klan march. Is he racist? Yeah, he's extremely racist. And that's not actually where the hate ends. I mean, as long as we're talking, are you aware that Pete Hegseth, also known as Whiskey Pete, is reposting some members of the clergy somewhere going on about how women should not have the right to vote. These guys got plenty of hate to go around, and they're trying to bring it to the city of brotherly love. Where we have the love statue, we don't have a hate statue. They're going to have to put that one up in D.C. we are not having it. Simply put, we are not the one. Do you have any other questions, sir?
Just kind of a small follow-up. Is this current, the cities, the fact that he's targeting the cities that he is, does that fit into what you were referring to as his racist agenda?
Yes. I mean, it's undoubtedly more than that because he has a long history of trying to get revenge on voters smart enough to reject him. Something that he did in California. He's never going to win California in an election. Something he did in New York. So in his first term, he figured out that the most economically painful thing he could do to the more affluent members of those two states was to change the deduction for interest on mortgages so that he could hurt them. You're going to see that he focuses upon cities that have a lot of Democratic votes, that have a lot of African American or brown votes of a variety. And you're going to see that he's even more likely to do it in a state he has not won. Pennsylvania, therefore, becomes a little bit more interesting. But you're going to see that it will always be a systemic approach to punishing the kinds of people and the kinds of places that he doesn't like, the ones who might stand up to him, which is exactly what I hope Philadelphia does. Sherry Stone. I'm sorry, Sherry, did you say Axios? Is that what you said? Yes. Okay, I just wasn't sure that I heard you. For a second, I thought you were saying Donald Trump was complimenting Philadelphia, but that was hard for me to believe, so I had to check. I would agree that there is no policy reason, no moral reason, and no legal reason why federal troops should come here. All right, let me see. Argenis Figueroa.
Thank you. I would like to ask you if it's possible to speak in Spanish for our audience, the reason of this press conference, and also could this happen in Philadelphia?
Okay. En español, estamos aquí para asegurar que no tengamos una invasión de un presidente que quiere ser rey en Estados Unidos. Tenemos nuestros derechos, no vamos a aceptar una invasión de una armada federal en Filadelfia y intentamos asegurar que no lo tratan. All right. Mr. Tomchuk, Metro.
No question. I have another one.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I would like to explore what implications of operational, community, and legal implications have this kind of action in Philadelphia.
La entrada de la Guardia Nacional aquí sería ilegal en estos momentos, inmoral en estos momentos y contra la seguridad de nuestras comunidades, para incluir la comunidad de personas que hablan español, y no lo vamos a aceptar. Vamos a empujar en contra de esta invasión de nuestra ciudad.
With legal actions?
Tenemos muchas posibilidades, acciones civiles en las cortes, pero también acciones en las cortes penales. Si tenemos miembros de la Guardia Nacional que vienen aquí y causan daño de una moda que constituye un crimen, vamos a proseguir y ellos van a tener sus juicios con jurados de miembros de la comunidad de Filadelfia. Of course. Mr. Dean from the Trace.
Yes, you've already spoken at length about why you believe gun violence is down in general across Philadelphia, but elevated gun violence is still a real thing, certainly in certain neighborhoods like Kensington or Red Mansion, necessity. Put another way, the hot spots are still hot. They're hotter than everywhere else. So, from your vantage point as PA, what needs to come now to bring down the temperature in the hot spots so that, those places too, those citizens can say, where we truly can feel safer. It's not just numbers on paper.
Thank you for the question. We have been advocating now for 6 years to have a state-of-the-art forensics lab in Philadelphia. There have been a lot of favorable words about that. There have been some budgetary commitments that are positive and that we encourage, but it cannot come soon enough. I am not exaggerating when I say that I've spoken to high-level law enforcement personnel who share my belief that if we had the state-of-the-art forensics in this city, if we were not lagging behind other cities in forensics, which we are, if we had a capacity that could take all the evidence rather than a sliver of it, we could drop crime in this city another 10%. And that is a remarkable thing to say when we are looking at historic lows in a city that has not ceased to be poor, in a city that has a constant flow and increasing flow, unfortunately, of guns due to our Republican-led legislator not protecting us. So I think that that's a very important thing we could do, but we need to make sure we never lose sight of the reality that we all learned an important lesson in the pandemic. And that lesson was that when you strip away basic prevention, you have catastrophic levels of crime. And when you not only pay for it, but you double and triple your commitment to it, you have historically low levels of crime. I know that the mayor, the police commissioner, city council members, I, and almost every Philadelphian would love to see this city's reputation become one for being consistently safe. We're on that path, but we have challenges ahead. And one of the challenges we have is that we have an administration in Washington, D.C. that is run for the benefit of rich people at the expense of poor people. They are trying to make the poor even poorer. They're trying to cut holes in the safety net that has held together the lives of poor people, and that will inevitably cause people who need to eat to do what they have to do to eat. Yes, I'm saying Donald Trump likes crime. I'm saying he wants crime. I'm saying in a multiplicity of ways he's trying to cause crime. I mean, he likes it in his own life, we already know that. He likes it in the lives of his friends, we already know that. But I'm saying he likes it in general terms because it allows him to do what every wannabe fascist wants to do, which is live in an unreal world, make up vast lies, scare people, scapegoat populations, especially the ones that can least fight back, and then carry out his ultimate goal, which is to eliminate elections, eliminate democracy, and take over the government of the United States.
Follow-up. Didn't the mayor put I think it's $45 million into the current budget for Richard's lab?
I want to give the mayor a lot of credit in her first budget address for talking about putting tens of millions of dollars into it. And I want to give the legislature credit for making its own commitment a couple years ago to this. And that's all good, but it's even better when we have one. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong, but this really should have been fixed 20 years ago. 20, before any of us were in elected office. It really should have been fixed 10 years ago, when a lot of us were not in elected office. So this kind of improvement cannot come soon enough. Budgets are a positive thing, it's a positive sign. There were years when we didn't even hear any talk going this direction, but we need to finish the mission.
At the city level, though, in addition to a better forensics lab or money for forensics and sooner, what else can we do here at the city level to make Kensington, Strawberry Mansion, and Logan, Belleville, Ontario? What can you do in conjunction with the city and the police department, the mayor's office, etc.? What can you do to make these hotspots safer places going forward? Because if you're on a tear, you're on a roll, obviously, the numbers say that, but and I know that people get shot every night in Philadelphia.
what we can do is we can follow best practices around the country and around the world. It is a fact that if you look at the last 25 years and you study homicide rates in the different states of the United States, it is a fact that the homicide rate on average has been 125% in the Republican states of the average in the Democratic states. So simple point number one, maybe look at what they're doing in the Democratic states, because it ain't perfect, but it's obviously resulting in a lot fewer people being killed. Point two, we can look at other countries that meet people's basic needs, because those are the countries that have less crime. It was not that long ago I was in another country, I won't tell you which one, I was on vacation, and I was looking around for people who are unhoused, because I frankly couldn't believe that I was in a major city of the world and there were not unhoused people. But there weren't, because somebody paid for housing, and somebody paid for public bathrooms, and somebody paid for health care, and somebody paid for mental health treatment that was accessible to everybody. And the consequence was we did not have unhoused people on the street suffering like that. And the same was true when it came to other public policies. You know, this is a country where we do not have to accept the notion of more guns than people. You look at countries where they don't have more guns than people, some of them have microscopic numbers of shootings and killings compared to the United States. That's just the truth. I'm not so sure that there's any organization that's done more harm to public safety in the history of the United States than the National Rifle Association, because of its extremist positions, because it is frankly the marketing arm of the arms industry. We can follow best practices. We can do that in Philadelphia. We can do that in the United States, even if we have idiots in the legislature walking around with AR-15 pins on their suit jackets. We can do that, and that's what we have to do. All right, let me see. I am so sorry I couldn't see your name there, Sherry. But Sherry Darden from Scoop USA.
I have a couple of questions. Prior to me coming here today, I took a minute to actually look at the newspaper, the African American paper from DC, to see what issues they're facing as of yesterday's announcement and today. And some of the things that they pointed out are things that aren't really made public. So part of what is being done is they're actually trying to discontinue programs such as the juvenile program that's in place there so that kids can't be put away for life. We know it as juvenile lifers here, which was discontinued here maybe 10 years ago. They're also looking to discontinue the Second Chance program in DC. During this 30-day term period here, they want to come at all progressives, which is, you fall in line with that, district attorneys.
Thank you.
Progressives, people who are implementing programs that allow the community to participate and heal itself. What are we going to do here to prepare ourselves? Because based on the fact that, number one, the Republican state in Harrisburg have come for you so numerous times because of the fight and the way that we fight differently. All right? Also, the programs are all in place here in Philadelphia. You and I've been around to see them, a lot of them coming to fruition and worked on a lot of them. What are we going to do to prepare ourselves for this fight? Because it is coming. What's next? Because this is good, just bringing it up and having a conversation and say, hey, we need to be aware of this. But what are next steps?
That is a wonderful question, and since I have a perfect answer, I'll just give you that answer right now. But I am going to ask my colleagues as well to give their answer. It's really not that complicated. We're going to stand up. We're going to have courage. We're going to recognize that there's a line right down the middle of this room, and on one side are going to be the people who do what history requires, and on the other side are going to be Donald Trump's people. And if we have courage, then we don't actually worry that much about the consequences to ourselves, because we want to make sure that there are not unfair consequences all around us for those communities full of human beings that we choose not to dehumanize.
I would also say to that my moral compass, right, my faith forces me to have to be a portal of healing and love and justice. And so yes, that there are programs, and certainly to the DA's credit in our city, that have helped to undergird and provide resources. But as faith community, where we have always, I'm going to use the word, been in the business of doing and caring and rescuing and lifting up and promoting our babies, our children, our widows, our orphans, whomever, we still are in the business of doing that. And having to also the strength of collaboration, being partners at the table, in order to be sure that these resources, that these programs, but also just in being, if you will, conduits, being places wherein people find hope and love and justice. And so to me, this regime can attempt to erase, to say you can't do, but on the faith end, you can't stop me from loving people. You can't stop me for feeding. You can't stop me for attempting to rehabilitate community, right? And so that's how, to me, that it's great. And yes, we need the city, we need the DA, but as faith, and because I lead with a moral compass, that's what keeps me up at night, is what more can I do to ensure that people feel that their lives do matter?
I'll take the question in a different way. I'm hearing you asking what are the next steps towards resisting the takeover of our cities by fascism, by what the King Donald wants to do. And what's one frightening thing is that the FBI has stopped tracking white Christian nationalism, which is probably the greatest danger to democracy right now. So I call on our DA and I call on Pennsylvania law enforcement to really ramp up its monitoring of white Christian nationalism. Remember, the last gubernatorial candidate in this state was an avowed white Christian nationalist. We might be entering into a phase of a lot of street violence by white Christian thugs. That's how the Nazis took power in Germany. That's how the fascists took power in Italy. So I am calling on our law enforcement in this state, in this city, to ramp up its monitoring of white Christian nationalism and to make sure that street violence doesn't escalate.
I don't know if I got all the questions. I had to, could you just rephrase some of it?
The primary focus is the progressive programs that have been put in place.
Okay, well.
They're under attack.
Yeah.
Not just, putting police officers into the street or officers that don't need to be there, but they're coming for all of the things that you guys have worked so hard to implement, which has made the numbers go down.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
So,
they're coming for it.
Neighborhoods were mentioned. We are a city of neighborhoods, and they're almost like small villages. And we know the statement, it takes a village. But we have to understand what makes a village. And what makes a village is when we connect with each other in the neighborhoods we live in. And when I say connect, I mean we have issues related to food, clothing, shelter, health, education. And when I say health, we also mean mental health. A lot of times we ask law enforcement and government agencies to do things that we really have to do for ourselves. And here's one example, and again, sometimes you don't solve a problem by going directly at it. We know that medical care is going to diminish for a lot of people, and that's going to create problems. But our health care should increase, and we have the responsibility for our health. So if we see we're going to be diminished in some areas, we have to fill the gaps in, and we start one block at a time, one neighborhood at a time. We need to have just connect the dots in all the neighborhoods, and then build networks and build infrastructure. And being reliant on just central authority is good for some things when it comes to external defense. But when it comes to state and local, we have our institutions, the courts, the schools, etc. But when it comes to the neighborhoods, we have we the people. And so we the people have to step forward. We can't just look for the institutions to solve all the problems, because we know what happens when a husband and wife have issues with each other and they call the police rather than calling family. So I would say we have to bring the human element in the areas that we are responsible for. And then we have to be certain that we support the institutions that provide the services that we need to make life viable. And the federal government really doesn't have much of a role to play except to redistribute monies that they collect. And one thing we should remind the red states of, they are welfare, or they are dependent on resources that come from the blue states. So if they want to see themselves separate from us, then they'll find out that there's a reality, or there will be a wake-up call, and I think many of them are now seeing the wake-up call. So again, we have to, all politics are local, and we have to see ourselves as taking responsibility for what we have the authority to do something with in the local area, and then connect with our institutions, and hopefully we can have enough leverage to be certain that federal policies and laws are in line with the regulations that are both in the Constitution and in what we may even call executive orders.
Thank you for that. I will say this, and this, I guess it'll be the last thing I say. If anybody needs a call to action, here's the news. And I say this to my fellow elected officials. I say this to all people who are in some sort of leadership role in institutions, or who enjoy some status due to their achievements, due to their power, due to their money, whatever it may be. You ain't the power. You ain't the power. Wherever you probably got there because the people are the power. We talk about political parties. They're the people. They're the voters. They're not actually whoever has a title in that group. That's what it is. And the problem that a wannabe tyrant like Donald Trump is never going to solve is that the power comes from the people. This is a country of 350 million, and he and his little band of buddies are only a few. So the call to action here is, maybe it's time for No Kings to do another protest in all the cities that are on the chopping block, Donald Trump's chopping block. Maybe it's time for us to accept and recognize youthful organizers, new organizers, people who've been viewed as outsiders, as the ones who have a path forward to get out unprecedented numbers of votes, to make sure those votes are counted. Because honestly, without getting into the specifics of it, if we have a big turnout in the midterms, our problems are over. They're done. And it's very important that we have that. So my call to action is actually to the people of the city of Philadelphia, who are good people, and they are smart people, and they are strong people. I was grinning a little bit when there was some discussion of the reality, the historical reality of white supremacists who have been the #1 domestic terror threat, and that's not my opinion, that's the FBI's opinion, who have been the #1 domestic terror threat in the United States for quite some time. I was just trying to imagine about 10 or 20 or 30 of them coming into the city of Philadelphia and trying something. Last time I heard something like that, they drove up from Texas on a bus, full of their Texas attitude. They got out of the bus, and pretty soon they were running back to the bus and driving back to Texas, because this is Philly. That's what it is. We ain't the one. We're not going to be the 2 or the 3 or the 4. This is a city where we stand up for each other, and we're going to keep doing that, and that is a problem that a wannabe king is never going to solve. So thank you very much. For anybody who has questions of a more political nature, I'll be out in the lobby, and then when we're ready to go swelter in the heat, we'll head outside. Thank you. Nice job. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great having you here. Gentlemen, Mr. John?
I forgot to make that one point. Question from Sherry. Come back, Sherry.
Hey, Sherry? I did miss a point that David pointed out, but I think it's...
Oh, hi.
remember me?
I do remember you. Of course I do. Outside the courthouse.
Yes.
He'll explain, but the fundamental point is there's shenanigans in the pool in DC that is flat out banned.
Yeah, true.
In the state.
Yeah, I know.
He's got.
I know.
I mean, he's got authority in DC. He
Yeah,
doesn't
that
have
he doesn't
anywhere
have
else.
anywhere else.
So he can't.
I think I see it as his pilot program. So we can talk because you know we're from the same background. I see it as his pilot.
Cold comfort for this from this administration, but there's no actual legal authority he has to come here and mess with our local programs, juvenile programs, or anything like that. And if he tries to come and mess with it, we fight.
We have to. We have to fight.
Like that's my job. It's all of our jobs.
We will.
We're ready.
We'll do what we can.
That's the least of my worries. So as somebody who understands the system and the way it works a little bit better, whenever I'm in a room with people who I know don't understand, I always try to point out facts that people don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
It's
I
my
appreciate
job.
that.
It's because there's no way that I worked in the public defender's office for 30 years and have the background that I have and not ask the right questions.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I didn't catch your name.
Hi, I'm Cherie Darden. They know me as Cherie Horsey.
Yeah.
I was the
So,
HR person.
Cherie.
Yeah, Cherie. You can ask anybody in your office, like, do you know Cherie? And they'll say it.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. But that's my role. It's always to try to